Hey, and welcome to Represent. I am your host, Crunk Chocolate. For those who weren't a part of Shady Gang last summer, the show Represent is me taking advantage of the off season, getting outside of my Manchester City bubble and talking to supporters of different clubs. No competition means we aren't in competition, a truce of sorts. During Represent, we aren't rivals, we are simply football family. Today's guest is a writer, podcaster, and a Featherstone Flamingo founder, for forward Madison FC stand-up, co-host of Walkin 90 podcast. He chose to be a Scouser. Let's try not to get hung up on that detail too much. Shady Gang. One time, two times, three times. Give it up for our guest, Kyle Carr.
Thank you. Excellent introduction. I'm just gonna soak in the applause. No, I appreciate you having me on, so it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. I I don't know. When it comes to like rivalry, it's more like I dislike clubs more than like people. Like I know the team you like and I dislike that club. Or maybe it's just because you, I like you as a human. Your tweets are nice. You seem like a decent person.
I'll take
You
it.
you mind your business. Like though that's all anyone can ask for. I will say I did have a experience here where I live. I have a mate, Dave. He's a Newcastle fan, and I bumped into him at a bar, and he was just like, "Hey, I want you to meet my pal," and he starts laughing like before he even like fully introduces each other. So I already knew that it was nonsense. And he goes, "This is my mate. He's a Scouser," and then he goes, "Hey, this is Royce. This is who I was telling you about. He's a City fan." And we just truly just like the anime where they just stare at each other and then there's like fire like that. That's exactly what it was. And I was just like, "Hey," and he was just like, "Sup?" And then he just looked at him and he's like, "Can we go?" And I was just like, "That's the energy I wanted. Yes, let's go. I hate you."
I feel like I had that when I first moved to Madison. It was definitely like, all right, yep, you're Manchester United, okay. And I think a lot of it for me, it's like particularly Manchester United and Chelsea. It's always been like those two have been a thorn in my side for so long. And it doesn't help that my dad's a Manchester United fan, my brother's a Chelsea fan. So when they were winning, they were just giving me all this
Yeah.
shit. And I just had to sit there and take it. And now it's like everything has turned around. It's like, all right, I feel good now. And especially being Chelsea in the penalties twice last year. I was like, my brother has no leg to stand on, so that's been great. But it is kind of the same thing where it's like, I think I'm more the opposite. I think it's like, I don't necessarily dislike clubs. I dislike fans. Like, I think it's like section of fans that bother me. Like at Madison, like the Tottenham fans in Madison are obnoxious. And it just makes me want to cheer against Tottenham every time. But it's like,
Well, I mean, I just
I just
cheer against them
I
every
don't
time.
mind them, but it's like, I don't want their fans happy. Everton was the same situation. Everton was the same situation. Like there's like after they survived, I went to the one person. I was like, I like you. I'm happy for you. I wish everyone else was miserable.
And so with City winning the treble, we had a decent amount of people like tweeting at us, being like, "Hey, congratulations! I know y'all are happy right now," and that meant a lot because it's just like I'm like, would I do this? Like if somebody else wins this next year, like not the treble, but just like a competition we didn't win, am I going to tweet at this person? And like now I like obviously I have to do, I'm gonna reciprocate, but it's like what was I going, would I have done it in the first place? Would I have been that better person? But the only thing I will say against that is, or towards that is, that's the point of having three other co-hosts because I can be the petty one and then they can be like the amazing, nice people saying good job and I can just retweet them and therefore I'm saying it too.
Right. I think for me, like with City this year, it was kind of like, it was inevitable that they would win this treble. Like it was only a matter of when it would happen. It was never an if. Now, would I have been cackling if they had lost to Inter? Absolutely.
Of course, yes.
I would have laughed my ass off. But it is kind of at the same time, it's one of those where it's like they are the best team, and you just go and you're like, all right, they are the best team. They showed it. And it is what it is. Like, it is what it is. Like, happy for y'all. Some other people, not so much.
Namaste. That's all we can ask. Namaste.
I think that's just
Well,
my approach now. It's like, yeah, some people I just don't want happy.
some people I definitely don't want happy, and it has nothing to do with football. It's just general.
Right. It's like I don't like you as a person already, and now you like this team that I don't necessarily want to win. Okay, I really don't want you to be happy.
Yeah, you just gave me the extra ammunition I needed to just really not like you. I already wasn't going to do it,
Right.
but it's just like, oh, you're that fan? Oh, of course you are. Oh, I love it. Okay, so let's, before we get into Liverpool, before we get into the football club, let's find out a little bit more about you as a football fan. So, let us know your football origin story. How did you become a fan of football? I heard you say that your dad and your brother are football fans. I love that, a whole footy family. And then, how did you end up choosing Liverpool?
So overall, my dad grew up in the Caribbean, so he grew up in Antigua.
Yeah.
So for him, it was always like it wasn't the sport, but it was always a popular sport. So for him, it was kind of like he grew up playing it. Like that and cricket were like his two sports. So when he got to the States and he watched the World Cup, he would take us to, like if there was a World Cup game that like someone's house, we would watch it. But the biggest thing I think was the Milwaukee Wave, which was an indoor soccer team. And that was like the only soccer we could get in Milwaukee, just because like Chicago was like it's like almost 2 hours, like a little under 2 hours from where we live. So it was like maybe if there was like a day we could make out of it, but otherwise there wasn't much like accessibility to like watching soccer. So that's how I kind of got into it, was like the Milwaukee Wave. Plus they played in the same arena as the Milwaukee Bucks did back in the 90s in
Mm.
the Bradley Center. So it's kind of nice where you can go to a Milwaukee Wave game and then you can get another ticket for a Bucks game and you're only spending like $20 for both
Yeah.
games. Good thing the Milwaukee Bucks were bad, so it made it easier. So for me, that's kind of how I got into soccer. I played 1 year in youth soccer. I didn't continue with it. I don't fully know why. My dad said I just didn't care enough, which makes sense. But that's how I kind of got into soccer. And then when my parents got Fox Soccer Plus, we were able to get that package. So then we were able to watch it, so we could watch the Premier League and some Bundesliga instead of just waiting until a World Cup comes around every once in a while. So when it came to picking teams, I was like, all right, well, let me just pick a team that looks entertaining, that looks fun to watch. So at that point, this was the 2008-2009 season, so Liverpool were still at a good high competing level. You still had Steven Gerrard, you had Javi Alonso, you had Fernando Torres running riot everywhere. So it's kind of like this team's fun. And then I found out my dad's a Manchester United fan, and Liverpool and Manchester United are huge rivals. So I'm like, well, now I gotta do it. So that's how I ended up with it. My brother, I don't remember why he picked Chelsea. I know there's a reason for it. I'm 99% sure it's Drogba, but I can't fully figure out why. But yeah, so that's kind of how I got into the sport. And ever since then, it's like, yeah, try and watch. I watched as much Prem as I could at the time. Went to college. It was a lot harder because I didn't have the cable package. But then when they moved to NBC, that when the Premier League moved to NBC, that was like a huge like opportunity to like be able to consistently watch more. And since college, it was like, all right, I have this. I now have the Premier League. I graduated, lived in Minneapolis, so I was like, okay, there was a bar. I could go to the bar and watch. Come to Madison, they had a meetup, so it was kind of nice like finding the local chapters to watch matches as well. Because otherwise, I probably would have just been watching in my apartment, which would have been fine. But it was nice like meeting other people that have that
Yeah.
same interest.
Yeah, having that community, I do not have that here. And I am about to start working with a local brewery, and I think I'm going to start hosting the matches, but I'm almost positive I'm going to have to work while I do it. Like
That's kind of the tough
that's gonna,
part.
yeah. And the thing is, I said as long as I can drink, that's all I care about. Like, I'm not going to get wasty faced.
Right.
Like, I will do the job right, but like, I'm going to actually be able to enjoy the match. Like, so It's great. I mean, I'm totally willing to do that. It's a brewery on top of it, so they make their own beer. It's great
Oh,
beer.
that's
They
nice. Yeah.
also, it's a craft beer on top of that. So the other beer that they have are really good beers. So it's a really good culture. So there are worse places to, have to work once or twice a week.
And that's kind
So
of the
it's,
tough part. Like in Eau Claire, there wasn't that. Like now, there's like one bar that does put on Premier League matches that do like World Cup. I was like, where was this when I was in school? Like I needed
yeah,
that.
man. Yeah, man. Like you said, Fox Soccer Plus, and it's funny, all of at least American, how the people that I've been doing this with, it's just been funny hearing the media form that they started watching football on. And when you said Fox Soccer Plus, I was like, oh, he's going back. Like I truly like flash back. I honestly like flash back to this kid. Like that was, yeah, man. Fox Soccer Plus was clutch. It was great. It was just for soccer. It didn't do too much, but there wasn't any interest for it. They weren't marketing it, and so they got
Yeah.
rid of it. And it was just like, why would you do that? There is no other place. And then they're like, hey, here are these other different versions that aren't as good and gonna cost more for a while. So
Yeah, and I think that was kind of
truly,
like the tough part. It's like, how much are you willing? And like, that's the funny part when everyone's talking about all these different streaming platforms. It's like, it's still cheaper than when like just getting the Fox. Like, if you wanted that Fox Soccer
yes,
Plus, it's still cheaper by a
yes,
lot.
because that was like $100. It was like
Yeah.
stupid. It was no, and then you wouldn't even be able to get the matches that you actually wanted half the time. Yeah, it was just like you take whatever you get. Who are
Oh
you
yeah.
gonna complain to? We don't even have anyone here that early. Um, okay, so let's keep it moving to Liverpool. Okay, so actually, I know I'm gonna get some flack um from my pod mates for I'm I'm trying to figure out. Wow, I guess I'm not as spiced about you guys because you guys still ended up where you in a very good position this season. You're nowhere, nothing like Chelsea. But like for some reason in my brain, you guys are back there with Chelsea, and you guys beat us. You gave us, in my opinion, the worst loss of our season, and it's I just I don't know. Maybe it will take like it's you guys s- signing Jude or some crazy thing like that happening for me to be like, okay, I'm back to hating these assholes. But right now, it's Arsenal. Like it's all Arsenal, and for the most part, they're chill people. But I just don't like them now. It's just their placement. They are the people right now. Them, Newcastle. I'm supposed to like them for some reason. Something about them. I feel like they're gonna like push us off a cliff. If they're gonna like act like they're our buddies, have their arms around us, and then when no one's looking, they're just gonna push us off a cliff. Like that's how I feel about
I feel like it's gonna be one of those where it's like Newcastle will be like, yeah, we totally get like the whole sport washing accusations and oil state. Like, I feel like they're gonna say that, and then when it gets like to a battle, they're gonna be like, oh, but City are much worse than us. Blah blah. Blah. I feel like that's what's gonna
it.
happen.
That's exactly what's gonna
I think that like with Newcastle, like that's gonna be the scenario.
happen. And then we're just gonna be sitting there being like, oh, it's like
It's like, damn. I mean, like, why?
that. Oh shoot. Okay. So Liverpool, let's rewind before all of these positive things, negative things, things that have happened. And we'll go back to the transfer. Uh what
Ugh.
were some of the moves or lack of moves did Liverpool do over this previous summer?
So yeah, summer of 2022, they signed Darwin Nunez, which
Mhm,
I understood the appeal. I think it was like 75 million or 85 million. It was a high deal. Like it was
mhm.
like it was Liverpool's record breaking signing. And I think there was kind of this idea of this guy is going to be the new number 9 because they at this point we're not sure about what's going on with Salah if he's going to resign. Sadio Mane had just left, and Roberto Firmino we didn't know. So like that big three attacking core that everyone was so used to with Liverpool, there is questions about how long that would go into the future. So to at least mitigate that, sign Darwin Nunez. Okay, good. They needed another attacker because after those three, and then you had Luis Diaz and Diego Jota, it's like, okay, you had five attackers, but it was a clear quality drop off after that. So the signing Darwin Nunez and that's both a plan for the future, but someone that could help out now. That was the first signing. Then they signed Calvin Ramsey, who was a young Scottish right back. They signed him from Aberdeen. It was kind of, I think this was more of a we need a backup for Trent because they had just sold Nico Williams to Nottingham Forest. So it was kind of like, okay, we need someone to play backup right back. So they got him. And then I don't remember who else they signed that summer. It was very. The problem was they didn't sign the one glaring need they had, which was a center midfielder. And they went through the whole summer, still didn't do it until deadline day where they brought in Arthur on loan from Juventus. And he played a grand total of 13 minutes for Liverpool all season. And
Was it
that is
really just
where
that?
Liverpool's problem, and that's why Liverpool did so poorly this year. Everything can come back to that transfer window and not signing midfielders.
Yo, I knew they signed him, and I remember never hearing anything about him. I didn't
He
know if maybe they sent him back to Juventus to play the season or something.
He played 13 minutes in the game that Liverpool got crushed by Napoli in the Champions League group stage, and then he got hurt. I think it was like a hamstring, and then he needed surgery.
Oh,
Um, so that took him out until early spring, and then by that point, it was kind of like, eh, maybe there probably was something Klopp didn't see. He was making the bench, but he wasn't getting on the pitch. So yeah, that was that transfer window, and like if you every time someone like, okay, what happened to Liverpool this year? That transfer window is like the clearest. That was the point where I was like, you could just point to that and say, this is where it went wrong.
okay. And I guess let's get the other, I guess, elephant in
Oh, they
the
also I
room.
forgot they signed one other Fabio Cavario from Fulham.
Oh, he's solid. He's a good player. I think moving from Fulham to Liverpool. That's a pretty like intense jump up in I guess expectations and fandom and stuff like that. If
And
he can figure that
also
stuff out, I think he's a good player.
yeah, and also he's purely a 10. Like he is a 10. And Liverpool don't play with a 10. So I think it was also like that adjustment where it's like you either have to put him out on the wing or you put him as a midfielder as an 8. And he doesn't have the physicality to really do well in the midfield. And he was okay out wide he was okay when he played. Like you could see the flashes of talent.
Mm.
And I think this is probably like the one silver lining of being in the Europa League is next year he should get more game time if he doesn't go out on loan somewhere else, and then we could start seeing more and more of that talent.
Mm.
So that was the summer transfer, and then trying to think of all the players that left. Divock Origi left on a free. I mentioned Sadio Mane, Takumi Minamino, who was very helpful in
How do you
helping
feel
Liverpool.
about that Mane leaving?
I was upset. Like I understood. He got paid. Like he wanted a new challenge. He got paid. He did really well at Bayern to start with before he got hurt before the World Cup, and then it was kind of like after that, it seemed like it went downhill. Like it was a bummer. I understood why he wanted. He had done everything he needed to. I would have personally have loved for him to stay, but if he knew like he was ready for a new challenge, it was kind of like, well, who am I to hold that? Like I don't hold anything against him. That's probably the one good thing about Bayern winning the league was like, okay, Sadio Mane is his champion, so like that's cool. But for me, because he was my favorite player, he is my favorite player. He was my favorite Liverpool player. He is my favorite one of my favorite players. So to see him leave was kind of it does hurt, but I understood
Yeah, I
it.
definitely I think Salah's feeling the I'm pretty sure he didn't expect, you know, or he maybe wasn't aware of how much protection Mane gave him,
Yeah,
and I think he learned it
and I
big
think
time
Bobby
this
leaving
season.
this year as well is going to be another potential for that because Bobby was really good this year and he's leaving and he's left and now that's going to be weird. It's just going to be weird seeing that like front three and it's now down to one.
Yeah, a lot of changes definitely happening, but we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Okay, so oh, what I was gonna ask is, How do you feel about this whole like ownership nonsense and the selling? Will they sell? Won't they sell?
I am not on the big FSG out like a lot of Liverpool Twitter are in. I'm not there because I also have seen this team nearly go into administration, and FSG came and saved it. I've seen FSG make the decision to bring in Jurgen Klopp. I've seen that. I've seen the benefits of this ownership group, like selling for like getting players, turning that profit to just keep building, kind of moneyball it, which it worked. Like it did work. They won a Champions League, they won a Premier League, they've won trophies. But I think where it's tough is you see the teams that you're competing against, whether it's Manchester City, Manchester United, Chelsea, now Arsenal, even Tottenham was like, you see all these other teams spending more and more and more. And you're kind of thinking we have to spend to keep up. And it's one thing when it's like Manchester United, it's like they are always going to bring in a lot of revenue and they've always been spending since the existence of time. Chelsea has always been spending. Like that's been like it's always been that way. Chelsea and City and Manchester United, those three have always had more spending power than Liverpool. And everyone has said that's fine. And then you're seeing Arsenal. And then you're seeing Tottenham. And now you're seeing Newcastle. And then it's like teams like Aston Villa. I mean, like you see like other teams spending. And meanwhile, Liverpool's kind of just sitting there like we're sticking to our model, which I understand because that model is what brought them the success. And I'd rather them be. It makes sense that they're not going to spend they're going to spend within their means because they don't want what happened when they took over, where all of a sudden this team is just broke.
Mm.
So they've done a lot of work as well, renovating Anfield, adding more seats, adding more capacity so that they can bring in more revenue at the gates. The partnerships, like the business side, they get signed on by Nike. They continue their shirt sponsor. Like they've done a lot of good, and but I do see why people get frustrated. But I also think it's one of those the devil is better than what the devil you might have, and that's where that
That's a good
whole
point.
Qatar aspect came up. And I saw a lot of people were like, "Oh no, 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 no! Like I don't want this to happen." I was one of those. Like I don't want like the team to be state sponsored because one, it would also be very hypocritical of me like to be all like so vocally against like especially like the PSG where it's like this is a state sponsored team and then
Mhm.
Liverpool become that. It's like, well, now I can't cheer for this because I would be very hypocritical. And I also think it's one of those where who are you gonna like, no matter who you get, you're gonna have a problem if they're not spending 600 million like Chelsea. But we see spending doesn't necessarily mean success.
Yeah, PSG.
I mean, you got to spend smart, and I think that's the one thing Liverpool have done relatively well is when they spend, they're making smart moves. Bringing in Cody Gapco in the winter for like 30 something million pounds. That's a good move. Alexis McAllister, trigger the release clause, 35 million. That's a good move. Those are the things that got Liverpool to where they were. Bringing in like think of all the guys like Salah, Mane, Firmino, Fabinho, like all these guys. None of them were going for like 40, 50, 60 million. Like other than Allison and Virgil van Dijk, and both of those repaid that in full easily
Yeah.
because they also spent like 50 mil on Naby Keita and he was terrible and was hurt all the time. So it's like you can't sometimes again spending is not always good. So I'm in the if you can find out, I don't know if they're ever going to sell. I'm sure they will at some point, but I don't think a sale is going to happen in the next 2 years. I think they want to wait until all their like projects in terms of like the stadium renovation, getting the women's team back to now that the women's team are like safely in the WSL, getting them back to winning.
Mm.
I think those are going to kind of be the focus. They just bought back Meltwood for the women's team to train at, so that's like huge because when they sold it, I was like, this is like a part of Liverpool that's just gone.
Mm.
That is an identity of the club. It's gone, and now it's back, thankfully. And the women's team will at least have a good training facility, which they should have been having for the last 10 years. But that's a whole different other topic. But I think FSG, like I said, I'm not a big FSG like they're great and but I also am realistic. Like they've done a good job overall.
Mm. Cool. Well, I appreciate that. Okay, so back to the club itself. What were your expectations leading into the season?
Consider they were so close to winning 4 trophies in a year. I figured they would compete for the Premier League again. I think they would at least compete. Did I think they could beat Man City this year? No, because Man City got Holland. It's like, oh well, crap. They just addressed like their biggest weakness spot. But I thought they would compete for the Premier League. I thought a deep-ish run in the Champions League was possible. And if they win a League Cup or FA Cup, or at least go on a run for that, great. But I at least expected to be in a battle, or at least to be in striking distance of a title race. Those were my expectations. Didn't happen. Not even close. In all aspects.
Dug out of those trenches because it was real dark for a little bit, and I won't lie, we were having a lot of fun about that on our show.
That's fair. It was kind of one of those where it's just like, it got to February, and I was like, I don't want to, like, I saw it was like 6:30 a.m. No, I am not waking up to watch the team at 6:30 a.m. If I'm up, I'll watch it, but I'm not waking up for this. That's the point it was getting to. Even like 8 o'clock, it was like, maybe I'll go to the farmer's market. It's just like, I'll enjoy myself. Let's not sit through this nonsense. Like, if I can find something, I'll watch on my phone, but it's not going to be I'm blocking off time for the day.
Okay, so with that and the overall season, what would you say was your like best win, key win, and then also what would you say for you was Liverpool's worst loss?
Best win, it's got to be a 7-0 against Manchester United by far.
I like that too.
That was easily like the best win. Had they beaten Arsenal in Anfield, I think that would have been a strong contender. But to beat your biggest rival 7-0 is winning 7-0 is great in general. Like, this Liverpool team also won 9-0 early in the season against Bournemouth, but it's Bournemouth, so it's like whatever. But you're beating a Manchester United team that was feeling confident as well, because I think they either they had just clinched a spot in the League Cup final, or had just won. It was it was around that same time. So Manchester United is feeling all confident. Liverpool is in just a dire situation. I think they had scraped by 2 wins against Everton and Newcastle, but it still felt like this team is not even close. I still expected them to win because it's Anfield, but to go in and then you get the goal before half, and it's like, all right, 1-0 up, it's good. That's what we want to see. And then the second half was just goal, 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 goal. And it just gets funnier and funnier and funnier. So for me, that was by far the best win. And that's one of those wins that you're always going to remember. Like, that's always going to be talked about. That's always going to, even though the season was crap, you will remember that particular game. That's going to be the game that everyone's going to talk about for a very long time. Worst loss. There's a couple of contenders. Losing to Bournemouth on the road, literally the week after winning 7-0. That's pretty bad. They got smacked around by Brighton and Wolves, I think, back to back, like right after the World Cup. That was rough. But I'm going to say the Real Madrid loss at Anfield, just because in the Champions League, they were up 2-0 after like 20 minutes. Like, they get the first goal. Darwin gets the first goal. It's like, all right, good. They're still, like, we could see it. And then Courtois makes a mistake, and Salah gets the second goal. Like, all right, 2-0 up at Anfield. Like, normally, you're feeling good. Like, you feel confident at the very least. Even though Real Madrid is Real Madrid, you feel confident that maybe it's going to be like a 3-1 win, 3-2 win, maybe a 2-2 draw, like, if things get to that point. And then Real Madrid they got Vinicius Jr. scored. It's like, okay, 2-1, fine. Alisson makes his mistake. It's like, all right, well, that sucks. It's 2-2. And then that second half happened, and it was just one of those where, like, that was the point where I was like, this season's over. This season is lost. Because you losing 5-2 at Anfield is bad. But you lose 5-2 at Anfield to Real Madrid, a team that has been a thorn in your side since Klopp has been there. And now it's kind of like one of those where it's like, I cannot rely on this team to win by 3 goals in Madrid. So I think that was the worst loss, because that was like the final, like, okay, this season completely lost. Because maybe, yeah, the Premier League might not go well, but if you can make a run in the Champions League, there's some solace in that. But that was kind of the, Yeah, there are levels. Real Madrid is on a whole nother level. And even if they had beaten, like, it just showed the gap on
Mm.
the elite of Europe and where Liverpool were that season.
Yeah, no, that was definitely crazy. I wasn't watching the match. I feel like I was doing something, but I remember
I
checking and
felt so
seeing
good about
Liverpool
it
up.
too.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, yeah, I was just like, yo, what is happening? Yeah,
And it just felt weird because it's like it felt surreal. I mean, it was one of those where it's just like, if this was in Madrid, that'd be one thing. It's like, okay, whatever. It sucks, but that's in Madrid, whatever. But to lose that at home
yeah,
on a famous Anfield night, that's
yeah,
rough.
yeah. So, looking back on this season, who would you say is Liverpool's club MVP? And it doesn't have to be like who everyone says it. It could be who you personally feel is the
Allison.
MVP.
Allison by far. How much worse off? Liverpool would not be fifth. They would be closer to Chelsea were it not for
Mm,
Allison. He stood on his. There are matches where he stood on his head, where games that Liverpool maybe drew would have been a loss. Games that Liverpool would have won, that Liverpool won, that probably should have been a draw. Like, it was because of Allison. Like, he made so many huge saves, and yes, he did have his mistakes, but overall, when the vast majority of the team completely underachieved to their expectations, Allison was probably the only one that met or exceeded the expectations. He was phenomenal, and it has to be him for the Liverpool's MVP because again, they would be closer to where Chelsea is if it weren't for him.
mm. Yeah, no, he's good. Yeah, I love my boy Anderson, and I made a prediction like 4 months ago. I was like, let's give him a year. He's going to take over Allison's spot on the Brazilian team, and it's not based off of any actual factualities because Allison is a great keeper, and technically for what Brazil needs, they need a shot blocker because that offers them the freedom for them to play.
Mm-hmm.
But they just Ederson, he's been working. He's been working on his shot blocking. He's doing his best. So I just that's my belief in my boy. All right. So
It's
nice
one of those where
to
it's
have my
like
Indians.
it's not like Ederson's doing anything wrong. It's Allison is
Yes.
playing so well that it's like you
Yes.
can't justify not playing him.
Yes. At all. Yeah. He would have to have a huge fall off in order for Ederson to take over. Or Ederson would have to just become God mode, which he's great, but City don't give up, I guess, the amount of chances needed for him to like establish himself as a shot blocker.
Yeah.
Also on top of his distribution. Okay, so how would you say, looking back on this season, would you say that Liverpool has underperformed, overperformed, or have they met expectations?
Underperformed. I mean, they finished fifth. I Even if they were a distant second or distant third place, they still would have gotten top four, and like it would have been a bummer, but at least you still finished top four. But you finished fifth, and that took a very good run of form near the end of the season to even get yourself in that position. You spent most of the time hovering around eighth or like around eighth, ninth, 10th. And again, kind of like what I mentioned, you go out in the round of 16 in the Champions League. Like, the fact that a year ago, at this point a year ago, Liverpool had just missed out on quadruple. And now it's like, there's nothing to show for it. Like I said, there's very few positives from this season. I would say they underperformed. And especially just because guys that were so reliable had stretches where they were terrible. Fabinho, who's been huge, and probably the biggest reason why Liverpool were so successful, he had a sudden drop in form. Trent was a defensive disaster class for the first half of the season. Virgil van Dijk, still good, but he was not at the same level that we were so accustomed to seeing. And then, I mean, like there are so many guys that were just like levels off of it. And part of it is they're all getting older. And part of it probably was all the games they played last season caught up to them. But I think there's also just the lack of midfield reinforcements. I think you look at Jordan Henderson, you look at Thiago, you look at Fabinho, it's like they're all getting old, and all of them either get hurt too much or they're just not as good as they were. But then you're looking at other options this season. It was like, okay, well, Ox hurt, kind of hurt. Curtis Jones showed at the end of this year, there's something there. Harvey Elliott showed at the beginning, there's something there. But it's like you're relying on teenagers to carry your midfield, and that's going to be harsh.
Yeah.
Like Stefan Bayatic, he's an 18-year-old. He burst onto the scene right around like winter, but then he gets hurt, and it's just like a lot of guys, just those levels just completely dropped off. And Darwin was not, he was fine, but I don't think he was as good as we were hoping. Luis Diaz got hurt for much of the year, so that was a bummer. Diogo Jota, once he finally got going, it's like, okay, good. He's scoring goals again, but too many players were just below the level we expected of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this is the part where we move to we're now in the present and we're in the off season. And before we can get anywhere, I do want to talk about Diaz because his numbers, like like the sabermetrics, the numbers in the numbers and all that stuff, they're out of this world. Like he should be doing a lot of numbers. But when it just comes to kicking the ball in the net, it just like his brain fritzes. And everyone says, oh, next season when he slows down. Oh, next season when he figures things out. But like, what if he doesn't?
I still have hope in him. I think he was Liverpool's best attacker at the beginning of the season. But then he got that knee injury, and then I think he rushed himself. And I think this is kind of like the biggest thing with Luis Diaz. He is someone that is going to take risk. He pretty much came in to do what Mane did, is he's going to take guys on, and he's going to use his pace and his dribbling ability to get past them. And then it was like, sometimes it gets to the end product, sure. Sometimes it was just like he made a bad decision, but he did his main job, which was get past his man to create something in the final third. And once he got hurt, I think, and you can kind of see it in Liverpool, like that threat, that direct threat, that person that could take the ball and beat guys, that was gone. And he got hurt in like the World Cup break because I think he just tried rushing back too soon. And because he was pretty much working his way back to full fitness, I think he is going to be a lot better next year. I think this is going to be like this next season will be the year that I think we'll see the old Luis Diaz, the guy that can take his guy and beat him. I think I really do believe in him. I think he has that no fear factor that so many guys on Liverpool lacked last year. And I think it's just more of he gets a breather, and hopefully he's over this knee problem that he had this past season. But I truly do think he is going to be pretty good next year.
Yeah.
And I think,
Because I mean, y'all really do have a group of just gamers, just some scrappers, like with Diaz and Nunez and Jota. And I loved Jota when he was at Wolves. And seeing him go to Liverpool, I saw it. Like I was like, man, he's just gonna have the ability to have open space and just run at people, and that's what he loves to do. He's not necessarily the speediest, but he's technically very gifted and he's fearless. And Liverpool's a great squad for him to be in. So, okay. So, I mean, same thing with Diaz, with like technically numbers are great. And then kind of when it comes time to the finished product, he just falls flat on his face. And with the price that Liverpool paid for Nunez, I'm sure you're expecting more. Uh, but do you feel he could be that man? This that I guess everyone was expecting him to be.
I still do. Yeah. I think this was a growing pain season for him coming into a system that expects a lot. Like, not only on the attacking side, but with the pressing. And I think it was tougher for him to kind of get used to that because he was more used to get him the ball and he can use his physical attributes to do what he needs to. And he didn't have to do as much of the pressing. He didn't have to, kind of fill in spaces where someone might lack because maybe one of the midfielders goes a little bit higher and he has to drop back. So I think he'll get there. I think he needs more time in the system. And I also think just getting used to playing in the Premier League is like having that season will help him because a lot of the times he would get himself in the right place, and he just and that was where the end product just disappeared. Which and that was always a thing people knew. Like we knew the end product was still a work in progress, but he was still physically doing the like getting himself in the right spots. You could
Hmm.
see what he's trying to do, but I think it this year. I still think he'll come good. It's gonna be interesting though where he plays because there's a lot of times where Klopp would put him out on the left and not in the middle. Whether he put Jota at the 9, whether it was Bobby or Cody Gapco later on, like how Klopp wants his nines is they either got to drop in and kind of be that false 9, which is where Gapco and Bobby thrived, or they got to be pressing nonstop, which is where Jota thrived. So I think if he play and like putting Nunez out on the left kind of takes that ability, like takes his like physical. I don't know. I still think he'll come good, but I think there is a you're gonna like he's gotta. I don't think this is the year that he needs to show it, but if he can't put it together by the end of next year, there's gonna be a lot of questions around him.
Okay, so I guess let's move to the manager. How do you feel about Klopp? Because I'm going to be honest, I don't like the man. I used to when he came to you guys. I really liked the energy that he had at Dortmund. It just seems over the last couple of years, he was always like defiant. He was always like maybe like a little bit defensive, but now he's just like I don't know. He just seems very whiny, and maybe his veneers have gotten bigger. I don't know. It's just something about.
I think a lot of what Klopp does is he's going to shift the attention away from his players when they don't do well.
Mm.
And he'll willingly take that. And sometimes there are things where it's like, okay, why? Like, it felt like there was a lot of times this year was kind of like, what? Why did you say that? Like, a lot. And like, the biggest thing was, he was like, kind of like, we don't need a midfielder. It's like, no, you clearly do need a midfielder. And then he later admitted, like, yes, we did. Maybe I was wrong. But I think a lot of the time, Klopp will do it because to try and take the heat off his players. I think the only time where it was kind of like Klopp was just brutally honest was after Liverpool lost to City in the Etihad, where it was like 4-1. And he even said, like, even if I don't remember which player, he was like, even if they had gotten sent off and City was down to 10 men, we still wouldn't be able to beat them. And it's very rare that Klopp would just be so frank about his team not doing what needed to be done. But I think there's also an aspect of he is stubborn. Like, he is stubborn. Like I mentioned with not needing a midfielder, but there's also like the whole okay, this tactic isn't working, or why are you still sticking with some of these players that are clearly underachieving? You know, like Henderson, Fabinho, like even Trent at one point. Like they're all these guys are not doing well, and yet you are still throwing them out there, and that's not making sense. And maybe it's just and I think he's just one of those like they will figure it out. I trust them to figure it out, but it was one of those where you have to do something different. If this isn't working, and it clearly wasn't, you need to change something. And I think he was just so stubborn in that. I still will 100% take Klopp over anyone in the
Yeah.
squad. Like if it's one of those, like I know people talk about, well, should Klopp get sacked? I was like, you are an absolute idiot. Unless you get Zidane or maybe Carlo or Pep himself. Like if you get one of those three, fine. I'll at least entertain the offer. But
Yeah. But who are
you,
you replacing? Yeah.
like there's you see what happened with Chelsea. Like they got rid of Tuchel and then they bring Graham Potter. It's like okay, they got rid of Potter. They had Frank Lampard take over the rest of the year. Like be careful what you wish for. So I still think Klopp is the guy for the job. I think him like until he decides he wants to leave, that's where I'm at. You like unless he gives you a very clear reason to fire him, you cannot fire him.
Mm. Yeah, I feel that. All right, so now let's movements. I mean, you just signed Matt Callister, so that's a very good start. Um, you mentioned the midfield. Is that it? Is that the only? like real place of substance that you really want Liverpool to focus on this summer? Is there another position that you're thinking of?
I think now that they're kind of doing this with Trent and kind of having him be more in the midfield, I think having another center
You're
back.
welcome for that, by the way. You're welcome.
It's one of those where it's kind of like, why? It was because Trent's always been one to like kind of drift in the midfield, and it's like, okay, whatever. But that was like he's just in the midfield. We're like, what the fuck is he doing?
Yeah, just looking at that formation, and it's just like, wow, this looks eerily formation familiar to something we're doing.
Yeah, I was just like, why is it took a while for me to catch on. I just thought it was just Trent saying F it. And I was like, what is he doing? I was like, oh, this is planned.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, it's working. So if they're going to continue doing this, they need a third center back. I
Mhm.
think Joe Gomez, he's too inconsistent.
So,
Like when Gomez is on, he is great. Like he is really good. Like it makes sense why people thought so highly of him when he is on. But there are too many times where he was just bad. And it's kind of rough. So you have him, and then you have Joel Matip, which he's another one that I think the age is just getting to him. And he is not someone that you can consistently rely on. So now you have Konate and you have Virgil van Dijk. So I think getting another center back would help, especially if they're going to do this kind of three center back formation and have Trent kind of float more as a right wing back, center mid, whatever. So I think getting that, and then I think just another. I'll see how Calvin Ramsey does this year. He didn't really get to show a lot because he also got hurt, but I think maybe they still need another midfielder, at least one more midfielder, probably two. That's still you lost James Milner, Naby Keita, and Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain all left at the end of their contracts, so you got to replace those three. So I think getting two more midfielders would be good. But I would say center back's that's the other spot where it's like maybe getting one more guy would be good just because that the drop off from Virgil van Dijk and Konate and Gomez and Matip is too large for a team that you should expect to compete for a title. Like if top four is like the thing you're aiming for and like that's your top goal, you can maybe get away with it. But for this Liverpool squad that expect more, they got to get one more center back.
okay, so let's just say, through my gritted teeth, that Liverpool make all the right choices and they bring in all the good players, and you're happy. How would you feel, and what would your expectations be for the next season? Or
I think they should be back in at least top four. Um, Try and be in striking, like I said, try and be in striking distance of a title race. Whether
win the
they're in a
Europa?
title race or not, that's one thing, but I think they should at least be ambition. I think there should be a point, there should at least be a one point where it's like, okay, I think they could legitimately compete for the title. Not as like winning, yes, but that'd be great. But I think just competing, getting back, maybe not getting to the same level as they did in 21-22 or 18-19 or 19-20, because I feel like that's just not sustainable to expect
Mhm.
90 plus points. But to get into that 80s range, I think that's something. And then I want them to win the Europa League. I think that is you gotta win. I want them to win it because even if things don't go as you want in the league, getting that Europa League, that is a European title, that is automatic
Mhm.
Champions League, and that puts you in pot one
Mhm.
too. So then you don't have to worry as much about a group of death potentially. So, and I think that's a competition they should take seriously. Maybe they play some of like the fringe guys that come off the like some of the squad players in the group stage, but once you get to the knockouts, I want them to go all out. I Liverpool is a team that should be trying to win trophies whenever they can. And winning a Europa League, especially because it's like what other team like at least like if you think about some of the other teams, you don't have to deal with Sevilla right now. You don't have to deal with Real Madrid anymore, so we don't have to worry about them in the short term. But I think if you're looking at the odds, like Liverpool's probably going to be the odds-on favorite to win it. I think that should be
It
expected, and
makes
that's
sense.
that's why I think they need to go for it. I want them to win it, if not make the final. If they play Sevilla in the final, then okay, whatever. Then like that's just the way it goes because it's the Sevilla Cup. But I want them to take the Europa League seriously and truly, truly try to win it.
Yeah. And they should. I mean, you're in the competition. I understand your hopes were Champions League, but you're not there. So you need to be professional and be winners and win that cup. It is, especially if you're gonna, because I remember Klopp having to be like, guys, relax. This is, yes, we wanted to be in the Champions League, but this is a great competition. We're still gonna, this is still a European competition that we are playing in.
Hmm.
And it's just, man, good on Klopp. Like that's the one positive thing I will say on him. Like having to deal with your set of fans that y'all have. Like I'm not saying City fans are any better, but we aren't in the whole like fire everybody every 30 seconds type of vibes. We're just kind of in like either we're incredibly snotty or despite all of our winning, they still think bad things are about to happen. And that's honestly just as annoying as the people who are like, we should win everything all the time. And it's just like, come on, can't we just find like a middle ground where we just are happy to be here? Let's just have fun. I don't
Like the
know.
fact that people are saying, I just hope they don't have European football. It's like, absolutely not. No, I don't. Even
No.
the Europa Conference League,
What?
sure. Do I want, like, would the Europa Conference League be the thing I want Liverpool to win? It's not what I aim for, but like, if you're in that competition, go win every
And win.
competition you're
That's
in.
what you do. Yeah.
Again, this team was that close to getting a quadruple. And you're telling me, like, even after they won the League Cup and after they won the FA Cup, then you start thinking, oh, you got 2 trophies, get more. I want them
Mhm.
to continuously win. I want a trophy every year. Like, that is what I hope. Get one trophy, whatever that trophy is, get a trophy because that's truly what's going to put you in that category of some of the all-time greats. How much did you win?
Yes. Facts. Okay. Well, I am out of questions. So, is there anything that I missed? Is there something about Liverpool that you just feel the need to say?
They'll be back to being more of the Liverpool people are used to. Now, like I said, is that going to be the 99 points, like almost damn near getting to 100 and stuff like that? No, but as people saw against Arsenal in the second half in the game at Anfield, as they saw at City at Anfield, like especially at Anfield, there is still a very talented team that on their day can beat anyone, but they have to be. It just needs to be consistent. And I think that's still the thing that people forget is Liverpool can beat anyone on their day. They just need to show it more often,
We,
and they didn't do that last year.
mm,
That's my final. Those are my final words about Liverpool. Will it come back to bite me? Possibly, but
hey, that's
I
the
feel
good thing
more
about.
confident. I feel more confident with them now than I did months ago because I feel like they also understand what happened last year can't happen again, and they're not going to. They're going to try their best not to let that happen.
Mm, okay. Well, obviously, the best for your club, but not the best for your club.
You can let us win the Europa, like yeah, Europa League. You're
Oh
like,
yeah,
yeah, they
yeah,
can win
yeah, yeah,
that.
yeah. Totally, 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 totally. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, go have fun in the Europa League and win that.
Go
Sure.
crazy in the Europa League. Well, can if you want to, please plug yourself, plug any things that you're tied to, you working on.
Oh
Let
boy.
Shady Gang know.
Yeah, so you can follow me at Twitter at Kyle Coche. Now that we are in full offseason, there's going to be a lot of Ford Madison FC stuff that I'm going to be talking about because the Bucks blew it, and that was depressing. And I don't care too much about baseball that much, but yeah, Kyle Coche on Twitter. You can follow Walkin 90, which is a show that myself, Yogi, and Ebony do. It is talking about USL League One, so you can follow that at Walkin 90 Pod. And then for Featherstone Flamingos, it's a all-inclusive supporter group that promotes and celebrates Black culture within Fort Madison. So you can follow that at FWD Featherstone.
Hey, let's go. Well, Shady Gang, once again, give it up for our fantastic guest. Yes, thank you. Thank you. And you know the vibes. Shady Gang, Shady Gang, Shady Gang.